All right, we'll call the meeting to order. It's our regular council meeting for September 9 of 2024. And first order of business, have a moment of reflection, and then we'll get into the approval of the agendas. So we'll start with a moment of reflection now. All right. On to the approval of the agendas. We have two, a consent agenda. Is anyone wishing to make a motion to approve the consent agenda or pull any of the items from the consent agenda? Councillor Wilson moves to approve the consent agenda. Call to question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Our regular meeting agenda, we've been asked to add a second item to in camera, which would be legal, intergovernmental. So with that, anyone prepared to make a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda? Councillor Fox makes that motion. Call to question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. For the good of council, does anyone have something they wish to share with the whole of council? We'll add the Taste of Fort Macleod last week, Thursday night, was, I don't know who ordered the weather, but that was amazing. And the cook-off was good. Congrats to the town on winning that one. After all those years of hard work, finally got the... Yeah, there you go. And it's always fun seeing the amount of people out. Everyone, I believe they had as much as last year, from what I understand. I can't remember. About the same. So it's a great event for people to get out and visit on our historic main street. Does anyone else have something they wish to share for the good of council? I know it's early into the season. Councillor Henniger.
Just wanted to welcome back all the students and LRSD, and then tomorrow preschool kicks off. So we just have a busy entrance into the school. So as well reminding people to watch for the playground zones and the school zones, because now we have little humans crossing those crosswalks.
Very good. Holiday season is coming to a close. CEO Burdett.
The school has just begun, so has volleyball season. And the Flyers boys and girls hosted a tournament this weekend, and the boys were able to take home the championship, the gold medal, and the girls got second. So two good performances on the weekend from the high school volleyball teams.
With no practice. 1-2 practices and they got gold. Congrats, that's great. Any other thoughts, comments? All right, then we'll carry on then to new business since we have no public hearings or unfinished business, and we'll go to bylaw 1985. And we'll ask our Director of Finance, Chris Holback, to introduce this bylaw to us.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. Good evening, Council. Tonight before you is bylaw 1985, which is our Union Cemetery bylaw. It is a refresh from the existing bylaw, I don't know what the old one is. Anyways, it's old. It's probably 5 years old since the last time we brought it to council for a refresh. So not much has really changed in this new iteration of the bylaw. We've compiled in the 2 amendments that we've made to the Union Cemetery bylaw since the last full bylaw was passed. And we've updated the rate sheets for the next 5 years. I've had our cemetery clerk and some other staff review it, just make sure that it's functioning well for both the public and for the staff, and we're very happy with it. We've done a little bit of refreshing to our maps too. And then we added some information regarding the memorial tree and bench program that the town offers the public. So tonight we're asking for first reading for bylaw 1985, the Union Cemetery bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone prepared to make a motion for first reading of bylaw 1985? First reading motion is on the floor. Any questions for administration? Councillor Monteith?
The scatter garden, are there any rules for that? And do you have to register to do it, or just what's the story with that?
So with the scattering gardens, there is a section in the new bylaw that we've added in. We've amended the original bylaw quite a little while ago, probably a year or so ago, and we added some verbiage about scattering gardens. So now we've just brought it into the body of the new bylaw, and we ask that if you want to scatter ashes, that you do come and let us know. Some people may or may not. It's free to the public, and there's just some general guidelines about if you're going to scatter ashes, don't do it when it's windy. You know, just some very basic rules. And then if they want to memorialize the person that they've scattered their ashes, they of course can come to the town and purchase a plaque on the town's memorial wall. But really there's not a ton of rules around scattering gardens.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other comments, questions? In terms of the rates and the percentages of increases year over year, is that the standard rate, 2%? That's kind of consistent with.
That's what I've done in the past iteration of the bylaw for the 5-year cycle. And then after the 5 years, what we do is we take a look at everyone else's bylaws and kind of where they're at. And then we'll adjust, like I did this year, for the first year of the new rate schedule. And then it's just 2 from there. And then we make adjustments every 5 years when it comes back to council. But like I said in my submission, it's really hard to,
Yeah,
there's really no guidelines. And I mean, we all administer our cemeteries differently in each of our towns. So it's really difficult to have any kind of real comparative. So we just try to make it what works for us, that seems fair, and that the public and everybody seems quite happy with the rates still. So
Okay. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, then we'll call the motion to question. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Moving on then to bylaw 1986, and again we'll ask our Director of Finance, Chris Holbeck, to introduce this borrowing bylaw.
thank you again, Mayor Fader. So whenever the town needs to borrow money, and this is a type of borrowing, of course, it's some credit card debt. So, I can't decide where I need to be, so thank you, Miranda. So whenever the town needs to do some borrowing, and credit cards are borrowing, it's a line of credit for the town, we have to have it through a bylaw. So whether it's our $2 million line of credit that the town has, or these 5 small credit limit credit cards for our 3 foremen and 2 other department heads, it does need to come to council, and it does need to be approved by council via borrowing bylaw. So a little bit about this borrowing bylaw. It is a program that's offered by Alberta Munis, and it's through BMO, which is a national bank, and it's a program for credit cards for municipalities. So most of our financing and banking goes through our bank, CIBC, and this one is through BMO. And it is to get 5 low-limit credit cards, $2,500 each for the 3 foremen and the 2 department heads, and $2,500 seemed like a reasonable amount. That's the amount that they can sign for and charge without getting a supervisor to approve it. So, and they can do that per transaction currently. So this is like an entire month of charges. So we wanted to try it out. Right now, the process is a little bit cumbersome. They have to, if they need to purchase something online, or if they need to go to Lethbridge and get something and we don't have credit at the business that they're at, they have to come into the town office and find me and get my credit card. And if my credit card's busy, they got to go find, Anthony or Lisa and get their credit card. So we wanted to try this to hopefully improve some efficiencies in this area. And we thought it would be, I don't know, kind of a good program to start with. The directors or the foremen are quite enthusiastic about this. I don't know if they'll be as enthusiastic when they understand how much I make them reconcile and bring me receipts, and that it goes through all the checks and balances that the big credit cards go through. But that's okay. They want some flexibility, and we're willing to let them have a little bit of flexibility with these 5 low limit credit cards. So tonight we're asking for first reading of bylaw 1986, which is the borrowing bylaw for BMO. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone prepared to make a motion as per the bylaw? Councillor Fox makes the motion for bylaw 1986. Any further discussion or questions? Councillor Monteith?
2 questions. Will there be separate bills when we get them? And does this mean there will be no personal expense claims?
So there's one consolidated statement for all 5 cards that I would receive. Finance would get it first, and then I'd forward it on to the department heads that have to put their receipts with it and reconcile it. So it's one statement. And then, as I said in my submission, then it goes through the normal credit card process. So once all the receipts are in, I've looked it over, it comes through your credit card process, and the CAO and a counselor would do the final approval on it per our procedures for the town. And then, what was your second question, Jim? Sorry.
Will there now no longer be personal expense claims?
No, personal expenses cannot, I wouldn't think we would, I don't know, we never talked about that. Anthony, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, most of the time with personal, the foremen don't have a lot of personal expenses. The only time really it would come into play is if they are doing like a training. And we try to cover off, we've actually gotten those quite a bit lower nowadays because we actually prepay the hotels. And so mostly most of what is claimed now when someone comes back from training, they'll claim if they couldn't use a town vehicle, they might have kilometers, but they usually use a town vehicle. And then if they had a few per diems. So most of what they submit for is just stuff that's just, yep, I was there for 4 days and I had lunch 3 days, but this day I had to pay for my own lunch. But in the off chance that they had to get something, like there are circumstances where, right now they don't buy things personally for the town that have to be reimbursed. So I think the chances of it would be really low the chances that someone has to buy something and get reimbursed by the town are pretty low. We have had some instances with the credit cards for that training and stuff, but with this new system, if there was an instance that something had to be paid for and it was town and it was approved and it was budgeted, yes, they would use their credit card because it still gets approved and reviewed the same way, but those instances are pretty low.
Because one department did submit expense claims regularly.
That's a very good point. I'm thinking just the 3 foremen at this point. The other departments, yes, they would remove that. Yes, 100%. Sorry. I was just thinking foreman.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? CO Burdetts?
One more comment, and thanks, Jim, for that reminder. One more comment. It is a best practice that whenever we have credit cards, that you are using the credit card with your name on it. The whole borrowing credit cards, someone takes a credit card to Lethbridge, that's really, we don't want to do that anymore. So this is the most appropriate way to use to use credit. And yeah, I think it'll help clean things up.
I know there seems to be some very creative, not creative, but credit card systems out there that are very flexible. So I don't know if you've looked at other options. I know Float is an option that's been used. And it's really interesting because you can go online, you can adjust balances and lock cards instantaneously. So it seems like a yeah, pretty flexible system rather than trying to order a card and you might get one 2 or 3 weeks, but you can open one with Float like pretty much right away. So, but that might not work with a bylaw. It'll be hard to manage.
Yeah, we might have to have like a variable limit or like a
Yeah,
little more
that'd be
flexibility in the bylaw that gives us a little more freedom if we had adjustable.
Yeah.
I don't know. But we know we have, at this point, this is the option that we're bringing forward.
And the only other question I had is an option to do 3 readings tonight, or did it need to come back at a further future council meeting? I don't think it needs a public hearing, so we should be able to do 3
None of
readings.
these need public hearings. I just didn't want to overwhelm council. If you want to do 3 tonight and you're amenable to that, that would be fine.
Okay, well, we'll start with first reading, and if anyone's prepared to go to second and third, then we can move from there. All right, motion is on the floor. If there's no further discussion, debate, or questions, we'll call the vote. Question all in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Anyone prepared to go to second reading on bylaw 1986? Councillor Henniger makes the motion. We'll call it, any further discussion, questions? If not, call it the question all in favor. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Anyone prepared to make a motion for unanimous consent to go to third reading of this bylaw? Councillor Fox makes that motion. As mentioned, we need unanimous consent in order to be allowed to go to third reading. I'll call the vote to question. All in favor? Unanimously carried. Anyone prepared to make a motion for third reading of bylaw 1986? Councillor Patel. If there is no further comments, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried for third reading of bylaw 1986. Now, if administration would prefer, we can go back to the previous bylaw and do that one as well if we want to. There's no use having it back on the agenda if we don't need it. Is council okay with that? Anyone prepared to make a motion for the second reading of bylaw 1985? Councillor Henniger makes that motion. Any further debate, discussion? Call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Anyone prepared to make a motion for unanimous consent for going to third reading? Councillor Fox makes that motion. Call it the question. All in favor? Unanimously carried. Anyone prepared for a motion for third reading of bylaw 1985? Councillor Wolstenholme makes that motion. And if there's no further discussion, call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion for third reading in bylaw 1985 is carried. All right, going on to bylaw 1987. And our Director of Finance, Chris Holbeck, will introduce this as well.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. Tonight, bylaw 1987, business licenses bylaws on the agenda for, I have it down for first reading, but we can do all 3 readings tonight if council so chooses. So this is also just a refresh of the business licensing bylaw that was first introduced and passed by council when I started working here 10 years ago. So there's been a few amendments since that time just to beef up some of the language and make it more usable for both the public and business owners and for administration. So those changes have been consolidated into this version. That's probably the only big change. And then there was a rate change. So that may be something council wishes to ponder before they pass this bylaw. We haven't had a business license fee increase in my time. and that's been 10 years. Not saying that it has to be changed, but I think with increasing costs for supplies and manpower and everything else, that we do need to consider a rate increase for all different varieties of business licenses, both for residential businesses, home and commercial storefront, and for non-resident businesses that come into our community and provide services. So, as you could, I don't know if you know what the rates were before, but I think probably the one that you're going to care about the most is that a residential business license rate for a storefront business or for a home occupation was $100 a year, and I've put in $125 in this iteration. So I know it's a 25% increase. So I mean, that's, it's 25% of $100, but I still think that's probably something council would maybe want to talk about. I just put it in there for a starting point. I think it's fair, but then it's the same as the cemetery bylaw. When you go look at other people's business license bylaws, there's no rhyme or reason to how much they charge. Some charge minimal amounts, some charge quite a bit, some are more complicated and they do calculations about full-time equivalency and how many employees do you have. And I don't think the town of Fort Macleod is I don't think we're prepared or want to put that level of red tape and burden on businesses and on us as administration. So I put in $125. I figured that was probably fair. We probably aren't going to look at it again for probably another 10 years. So maybe it'll just stay at 125 for the next 10 years. It is a big jump, and maybe there'll be some pushback, and you as council can discuss that. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that introduction. Is anyone prepared to make a motion for first reading? That doesn't mean it's approved. It just means that we go to the next step where we can have some discussion, and we can always make changes before we go to second reading. Anyone prepared to make a motion for first reading of bylaw 1987? Councillor Wolstenholme makes the motion, so that's to pass first reading of bylaw 1987. Any questions for administration on this bylaw? Councillor Monteith.
Can you explain the exemptions for professionals on this? Because obviously it's not a business exemption, but is it a personal exemption?
So, oh my good gracious. So professionals are exempted. After us that we pay dues to. So that is how we get the professional. And doctors. They're like we test exemptions based on other communities and how they exempt, and we found it to be quite fair. I don't think it's a high number, but the professionals like the chartered accountants and the chiropractors and those types of professional services that already have a designated governance body that looks after them and they pay dues to, they find it quite fair. They do get a business license, but it's zero fee. So they do have a business license, but we just don't charge them anything.
I'm not sure that's fair to other businesses, but so be it.
Councillor Henniger.
Just a question, is there any other municipalities that we can compare to? Because when you look at Claresholm, they double if you're a residential business, they're 125, and then if you're a non-residential, it's only 50. And then in Pincher Creek, it's $325 if you're non-residential, and then home occupations 120. It's just all over the map with residential, as well as obviously permits and business licenses for food vendors. I'm just wondering if there's any other municipality that again, we're seeing so many people come in to do business, and I agree with Jim. It's hard when you're, say you're like a consultant, but you operate here and you're going into, and you have a bunch of clients and you're doing business. It would be great to see that type of, I don't know, fee to that in a way, but it's so hard to regulate when a person's out and about. I'm just wondering if there's any other municipalities that are doing the level of business and work that we're seeing in development that we could compare to, because Pincher Creek, and no, I'm not gonna talk about other municipalities, but it's just interesting, we are growing. So is there anything similar nature that we're seeing this type of growth in a municipality that we could compare these fees, because they're all over the map?
Anyways, I did compare us to all our neighboring communities, and I found what you did, Mackenzie, that there's no rhyme or reason. It seems like council kind of, it depends on the council and what council is trying to bring forth with their decisions on these kind of fees, like, I don't know, making it, encouraging business by reducing the home occupation fee, or increasing non-resident contractors. There's just, and I can't find a community that's like us. Like, I don't know, the level of growth in a small community, it's hard to find anything that's even comparable. And then you get into the bigger centers like Coaldale and that kind of stuff, and that's, nowhere comparable to us again. So it's just, I start with what we already have and then just try to add some for the next decade, I guess.
Councillor Monteith?
Chris, is this, I hesitate to use the term money-making deal, or is this giving us powers to deal with businesses who operate within the town? If it's that, then I can see the professionals being exempt because their associations do the implementation of discipline and that type of thing. But if it's sort of a revenue generation, then they should be paying.
Sorry, I cited.
Yeah, I think that's Councillor Butchers.
I'll say just in the bylaw here, under section 3 exemptions, point J, it does say that businesses are excluded from the requirements of this bylaw by an act of the legislature or other provincial statute. And that includes professionals under the Medical Act, Pharmaceutical Act, the Chartered Professional Accountant Act as well. And so I think my reading of that is that if it's been legislated provincially, that those certain professionals aren't required to pay business licenses. That's kind of
In
my reading
those
of that.
acts, it would have to designate that they would not be paying business licenses though, correct? By reading
Yeah,
that?
that's that's kind of my interpretation of that, but it would, you have to dig into those to find the answer. That was always my understanding too, was that a lot of healthcare professionals or other professionals were exempt from business license throughout the province.
Yeah. I think in the introduction of the bylaw, there is some comments as to why, right? It's for the purpose of regulating and prohibiting, dealing with any development, activity, industry, business, or things in different ways, and then provide for a system of licenses, permits, or approval. So that's the main core behind it. In terms of the money, I think there's always administrative function, so I don't think it's a tax grab. It's more or less how are we need to be able to recover costs to be able to administer it. So we could pass first reading, and part of that could be direct to ask for some more feedback or whatever council may need. I don't think the rates are unreasonable. I don't think we've had any complaints on the rates. I think if anything, our rates are lower than neighboring communities from what you would say, Chris, is that correct? So the only thing is perhaps more of an increases, but I don't know that that's our interest at this point either. So we can go for first reading, and if anyone has comments that they'd like some more research done or some more feedback, then we can use that when it comes back to council for second and third. So does anyone have particular items they would like to see for feedback? If there is a quick comparable of other communities, maybe that's something we could get for the next meeting. I don't think it has to be exhaustive. It sounds like you've done it already. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Councillor Poitras?
Yeah, I'd just be interested to know how many business licenses we sell on an annual basis, and that might give us a better idea as to what sort of money is involved with this type of a rate increase, if it's significant or not.
And then how many people actually come in to get a business license that have no cost? Is that, because that's kind of, because if there's no charge to it, they don't really need to come in, correct? For a business license, whether it's an accountant or a lawyer firm, do they? Okay. They just get it automatically.
So
no
say mine just
charge.
comes in the mail.
Okay, interesting. Councillor Henniger?
I guess my question, we had talked about it a little bit with the website revamp, and I see it in other municipalities, and this is away from the bylaw side of it, but are we ever looking at the opportunity to go fully digital where you can apply and buy a business license online? I think that would help, especially with our food truck vendors who come in and we say, do you have a business license? And they can't make it here during business hours, but they want to come and serve up tacos. Like, that would be awesome if they could just have that go through so that we at least are knowing they're paying for that fee, but they also need a permit and all these other things. So just, that would definitely be an incurred cost for sure. So just wondering about that item.
So we are working with a company called Government Frameworks, and we just went over our business license electronic form last week. So we are getting the forms more digitized, so they would be on our website, and then it would just be automatically emailed to the clerk who looks after business licenses. First, it would go to Kelly, because they all go to Kelly first, and then when she approves it, it would go to the clerk, and it would just be very electronic. And once we're happy with those digitized forms, then that's when we want to get the ability to pay embedded into the website too, but it won't be this year, unfortunately, but it's coming.
Okay, so motion for first readings on the floor with some comments regarding some info we'd like to see before second and third reading. Any other comments, questions, debate, discussion? Seeing none, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion for first reading has been carried. And if in the meantime anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to reach out. Moving on then to our next, and we'll ask our Director of Finance, Chris Holback, to introduce the 2025 Fortis Alberta franchise fee.
Testing. Let's see, I'm too tall. Ooh. Hello. Can't do that. Oh my gosh. Anyways, thank you, Mayor Fader, once again. So the Fortis Alberta, oh, thanks, Miranda. So as council knows, we just spoke about the ATCO gas franchise fee at the last council meeting. We did approve the franchise fee for ATCO staying the same. And then we were going to get some additional information from our franchisor regarding the impact to different types of their customers of a franchise fee increase for gas. And I've put out those requests already, and I've got information back from ATCO, so I'm compiling that for the gas distributor. And so at the next day after we did that ATCO one, I got the paperwork from Fortis requesting council's decision on the 2025 franchise fee for electricity. So I put this together. I've recommended that the electrical franchise fee stay static at 15% for 2025 too, but I have already reached out to Fortis and gotten their customer information and their types of customers and the impact of any kind of a franchise fee for 2026. So we can talk about this one at budget too also if council goes with my recommendation tonight. And so I'm compiling all that information for both the electrical and the gas distributors for franchise fees so we can talk about increases at the next budget meeting in the spring. But tonight I am requesting that council approves leaving the 2025 Fortis Alberta franchise fee at its current percentage of 15% for 2025. And I will take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the recommendation is to approve leaving the franchise fee at 15% for 2025. Anyone prepared to make a motion based on the recommendation? Councillor Wolstenholme makes the motion. And as per our discussion with the ATCO one, it'd be good to have it as part of our budget deliberations. And it's kind of awkward because it's the next year following, so it might be a little hard to always determine those numbers because 2025 has already been approved, but always have to be thinking a year ahead. Any other comments and questions? If there's no other comments or questions or debates, then we'll call the motion to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to item 5, and our CAO, Anthony Burdett, would like to talk about the false fire alarm.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This next item was at the request of a resident, so I will give some of the background on the situation. They did not feel comfortable to come and present it on their own, and so I'll be presenting. On January 20th, 2024, the local fire department responded to a false alarm at 613 28th Street, which the renters, not the property owners, the renters monitoring company called in. Per town procedure, the first fire alarm within a calendar year was not billed to the owner or the renter. A letter was issued explaining that subsequent false alarms would incur charges to cover the costs of equipment and personnel responding to the call. On May 22nd, 2024, the fire department responded to a second false alarm at the same property, and the bill for that was $300 issued to the renter, not property owner. They have since requested that the fee be forgiven, citing difficulties with the alarm system and the process in reporting a false alarm to the security system. Administration reviewed the request and after considering the information provided, determined that the fee should not be waived. The property owner, or the renter in this case, was notified of this decision, but they've requested that it come before council. Attached to this is the letter written by this renter, and kind of the rationale and why they think that it should be waived. But our recommendation from administration is that council denies the forgiveness of the request, maintaining the $300 charge for false alarm at 613 28th Street for the alarm that was triggered on May 22nd, 2024. And to some, I think, that sounds a bit cutthroat, but it is, we, administration, we stand by the policy and the procedure. And while it is unfortunate, there's a reason that we forgive the first one. It happens sometimes, but there is a real cost with every call out that happens in the fire department. So even the ones that we are forgiving, there is a cost that the town incurs. And even with the calls that do have a fire, there are costs incurred. A lot of those don't actually get collected because of the challenging circumstances that it can be sometimes. And so it is our recommendation that we stick to the rules, but I'm open for questions or comments regarding this matter.
Thank you for that summary. Is anyone willing to make a motion? I think we technically should have a motion in the positive, so if there is no motion, then there is no decision, correct? Is that how we should be doing it? Or we can have a motion as per the recommendation to deny as well, that works too. So based on the summary and the information you have, is anyone prepared to make a motion on this agenda item? And my personal opinion is, sorry, okay, Councillor Monteith.
I make a motion we not, or we deny the forgiveness request. I understand there are circumstances, but the problem is if you forgive one, there's no line. Where do you draw the line? And they're all valid reasons, and I sympathize, but we just, it'd be chaos if we did. This one, I would think you would go to the alarm company if it's not working properly and get them to pay it, because that's really where the fault is. But, we've had property tax claims where, and circumstances and this and that and the other, but we can't, because we do one and we're just opening it up. So that's sort of my reasoning for that, even though the reasons may be very valid.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Henniger?
No, thank you for the letter, and it paints a picture very much of what happened, and there's kids screaming, and you can't get a hold of people to say false alarm, and they're coming to your home or your residence or your rental. And I do agree and echo those comments that looking at the bigger picture, if we do allow false alarms to just keep going, we are going to have situations where we have multiple false alarms, and that is our resources that we utilize, regardless of anybody needing them for fire, emergency, things like that. We do need to make sure that's upheld, but as well, I agree with Jim, going to that alarm company, being very vocal on social media about how they're not helping you as a parent as well. That seems to help in 2024 when you post about those things, but it's looking at the bigger picture of we can't allow false alarms to happen for all residents, or else that is going to be a lot of cost to us in our emergency services. So that's just my comment on that.
Very good. Any other discussion, debates? Councillor Waitress?
I think I'm too much of a softie for this sort of stuff. In reading her letter, I sympathize with her efforts. I feel like she made a diligent effort to try to disarm the situation, so to speak. But I do agree, there's precedents that need to be set, or we can't set those precedences. However, I think that as a council, we do have that ability to take individual cases into consideration. And so I would be favorable in perhaps a reduced rate for her, a reduced penalty, if that can satisfy both sides of this equation. that might be doable. If council is amenable to that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Comments? I think some of it that I look at is we have a volunteer fire department that every false alarm, they're coming away from their jobs, pulled away, interrupted. The time, $300, I think, is pretty cheap, considering that you have, I don't know how many individuals would have been called. I think minimum 3 or 4, right? To any alarm. Yes, so I don't know how many in this case, but yeah, minimum you have a truck with minimum 2 people. I'm thinking probably could be up to 4, and that cost to the town, it's not, yeah, it's hard on our end too, right? And so if we don't charge for it, it ends up being just a giveaway for that time and energy that was expensed. So that's where I struggle. I know it's a fee. I know the mom would have been doing everything she could, but in this case, it's a little hard. That's a risk you take with installing an alarm system, for one, because they don't always operate 100%. So that's the challenge that I'm having with this. So based on comments, Councillor Monteith, you've been asked perhaps by Councillor Poitras to make a friendly amendment to a reduced rate instead of a full rate, but since the motion's on the floor, we either need to make a motion to amend the motion or to have a friendly amendment to the motion. Any other discussion or thoughts on a reduced rate? Councillor Wolstenholme, what are your wise words?
I agree with Jim, and I am a softie like Aaron, but this is, sometimes you just can't be too soft. So I don't think we can give them a reduced rate, even though I would like to, but thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Poitras, did you want to take your position a little further with a motion to amend, or are you good?
Oh, sure, why not? I would propose a amendment to the motion that the fee be reduced 50% to $150.
Okay. All right. Amended motion is on the floor for discussion to reduce the rate from 300 to 150. Any discussion on the amendment motion?
I think it just creates another issue because how do you determine what the percentage of reduction is? And do we have to define it or whatever? Like I sympathize, but we can make this stuff really complicated if we want to.
Okay. So in discussing the amendments, any other discussion? Whether you would support or deny the amendment? Councillor Fox, you've been silent.
I feel like making an amendment to it and just reducing the fee would be putting us in the same boat as waiving it altogether. So I'm against the reduction.
Councillor Patel, you're up.
I would be in favor of reducing it to 50%.
Do you have a reasoning behind that?
By just reading the letter, I think that for this once, we could make this work.
All right, so the motion to amend is on the floor. If there's no further discussion or debate on the amendment to the motion, I will call that to question. All those in favor of the motion to amend? All those opposed? Motion to amend has been defeated. The motion that was originally made to deny the request is on the floor. Any further discussion on that? So the motion is to deny the requests, and we'll call that to question. All in favor? All those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We will carry on. Moving on to Alberta Community Partnership Grant application, and we'll ask our Director of Operations, Wally Ola, to speak to this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're asking the town of Fort Macleod is applying for the Alberta Community Partnership Grant with the MD of Willow Creek, with the town of Fort Macleod being the managing partner. We want that the town of Fort Macleod supports the submission of a 2024-2025 grant application in support of the Regional Water and Wastewater Master Plan project. We are asking Council to instruct town administration to write a letter of support and also request that the MD of Willow Creek also support the grant application. If we recall, we had an infrastructure master plan that we produced as a town from our engineering consultant, MPE. This master plan is about 10 years old now. The last one was in 2014. And this grant will help us to be able to update the water distribution section, will be able to help us to update the sanitary and infrastructure portion of this IMP. And we want the MD of Willow Creek to help us in writing a letter of support. And we want town council to instruct administration to write a letter of support in favor of this grant application. If you have questions, I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone prepared to make a motion based on the recommendation? Nobody. Councillor Boydras. Motions on the floor to approve the grant application. Any questions for administration? Councillor Monteith.
Did we not just go through something that was a joint partnership with the MD? Was it not on this?
Yeah, we just completed our stormwater management plan, and it was also through the ACP grant application that we got that. So how the fund works is the cost of doing the master plan will be funded fully by the ACP grants, the fund that we get from the government, and our engineering consultants will use this to do all the packaging, do all the research, write all the reports, and provide all the answers to all the questions that we have concerning that particular topic that we want to research about.
So what will we have at the end? What is it going to tell us?
It's going to give us an overview and a deep insight into all the questions we have concerning that. I'll give you an example. The stormwater master plan that we had a few months ago, he's helping us. Like I was with the CEO this afternoon, and we were discussing on some flood issues in town, and we pulled up this report, and it gave us an insight into how to better understand the flood issues in town. So this grant application is going to help us with the water and wastewater management plan of the whole town. It's going to project the population of the town, how we are growing, when we need another waste treatment plant, when we need another water treatment plant. It's going to give us like an overview and insight into the plan for the future, and we'll be able to plan better.
So why is it tied in with the MD?
Okay, so we would understand, would agree with me that we are not isolated, and being an adjoining municipal location to the town, we need their support in that we have some common things. From here, the partnership between the town of Fort McLeod and the MD of Willow Creek is a collaboration where we have shared municipal service delivery in areas such as regional land use, emergency management, transportation, and recreation. The partnership recognizes the importance of safe, viable, and well-maintained municipal infrastructure. So, for example, we have some out-of-town water users that are using our water. So, this report will give us insight into how to better manage our joint use and agreements that we already have in town.
Very good. So between the stormwater and this grant application, I think the MD would have less of an impact on this one, correct?
They may have more impact.
May have more.
They may have more because we're generating waste. It's going through the Old Man River, so we are not isolated. So all these things will be put into perspective when they're writing this this report, and we cannot on our own only support this application. We need their support as well, and they've requested that we should write them a letter requesting for their support, and that's what we're putting out to council to help us with. Thank you.
Bottom line, this is something administration sees as valuable for the town of Fort McLeod moving ahead, and it's recommended, and it's something that we could use probably for 10, 15 years or even longer, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not a one-year plan, it's going to be a long-term plan. Okay, is there any other questions? CEO Burdette?
Just a comment I was here when we got, when we received the last grant, right, and it was exciting. And the MD has been really good at supporting us in these endeavors, and the town definitely gets the bulk of the value. But yeah, as an MD resident who, this is my hometown, like, we know that the services get used, and so there is a value that is shared, but we obviously get the bulk of the value from these, and so we are very appreciative of the MD in the past ones that they've supported us. And yeah, it's a really great tool for us to use and a great opportunity to use grant money to facilitate the growth of our infrastructure.
Very good. If there's no other questions or comments, we will call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And that concludes the public portion. We will request a motion to go in camera for the 2 in-camera items. So someone prepared to make that motion. Councillor Patel makes the motion. Call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried.